Hey everyone, did you know that Wuthering Heights is really one of the most artistically beautiful films that I've ever seen? But here's why I'm not sure I can recommend it. I'm going to break it down so that you can decide if this is your cup of tea or if you're going to need something stronger. The new film Wuthering Heights, starring Jacob Elordi and Margot Robbie, is this new adaptation of the classic novel by Emily Brontë about frustrated love and cruel revenge. If this is the kind of review that you find helpful in deciding if a movie is ticket worthy, please give this review a thumbs up and subscribe. But fair warning, I'm going to get into a few little light spoilers here, but I promise it won't ruin the film. The story opens with this hanging. Everyone in town has shown up for this hanging, and Catherine and her companion Nelly, they're just children at this point, and they're there to watch this man die. And they're exhilarated by watching his death and the way that his body moves and some of the involuntary responses, let's just call them, that they see. The next day, Catherine's father, this vicious and brutal drunk, brings home a young boy whom she renames as Heathcliff after her dead brother. And he's kind of raised alongside of Catherine and Nellie. From the moment that Heathcliff is introduced, there's this obsessive and possessive relationship between Catherine and Heathcliff that shifts between romance and siblings and best friends. Nellie is pushed aside as Catherine's focus, as she kind of pushes all of her energy onto the boy. And she does it in this entitled way that only a woman who just has a visionary beauty about herself, who's able to make herself the center of this world, could manage. And her bouts of lavishing cruelty, followed by love, become this push pull that keeps Heathcliff emotionally tied to her at the deepest levels. In turn, he draws her father's cruelty away from her and onto himself, acting as her brave protector, drawing them closer together as their lives and, I don't know, feelings for each other really become really entwined. At least until the extraordinarily rich Edgar Linton moves into the house that's kind of closest to theirs on the moors. And that's when everything kind of changes for Heathcliff and Catherine as she starts to work her wiles on Linton, enticing him into this marriage proposal. Hurt and angry, Heathcliff runs off in the night, leaving Catherine alone with her choice to marry Mr. Linton. 5 years later, Heathcliff returns after she is now long married, and he's this rich man who has bought her father's house, but there's really no explanation or no, I don't know, discussion or dwelling upon how he got his money and how he maintains his income after returning. That is all set aside for the inevitable sexual romance between the two of them that just devolves into this vicious game of emotional cruelty toward each other and those around them, which is fueled by their obsessive desire to possess each other at literally any cost, as long as it doesn't endanger Catherine's comfortable marriage, that is. From there, the film really escalates into a wild crescendo of sexual absurdities and demeaning cruelty toward each other, Nelly, Edgar, and Isabella, in a way that captures the same awkward feeling that we get from that opening scene with the hanging. Yeah, so does this mean that Wuthering Heights isn't worth watching? That really depends on what you want out of this film, because while there is an audience for it, it really isn't going to be for everyone. On paper, it's an interesting setup for a prestige drama that is really far more provocative than the novel from which it was adapted. It captures Catherine and Heathcliff's story in what can only be described as cinematic artistry that is so vibrant and immersive that the film makes what it's doing emotionally difficult to stomach when you really break it down. It's not that the film is shocking or unsettling because it's not any bolder or more shocking than 50 Shades of Grey. If it were set in a grim house set on the Yorkshire moors in the early 1800s, that is, what's rough about this movie is how it embraces the romantic framing between Catherine and Heathcliff, which seems to glorify their deeply unhealthy, vindictive, and toxic relationship through some of the most gorgeous displays of cinematography that I've seen in years. The film itself is so beautiful to watch that you can't look away, even as their relationship devolves into something so sexually destructive that calling it tragic feels dismissive of what actually happens between them. What little sympathy you can scrape together for them just evaporates as soon as you consider the willful wreckage that they both cause to the people whose lives they destroy just because those people are in their orbit. This isn't a beautiful romance story about star-crossed lovers or unrequited love or lost chances. It's not even a tragedy because in a tragedy, there is some level of wistful longing that the romantic leads could have found to kind of find a happy future together. But with Wuthering Heights, you quickly realize that even if they had figured out a way to be together, their personalities are so toxic that they would have had a cold and unhappy life together. Instead, it's a modernized take on Emily Bronte's novel that extracts the essence of the story while taking liberties with some of the original story's plot points to make this gorgeously wrought film about generational trauma and the power of sexual possession and emotional vengeance. Catherine's obsession with possessing both Heathcliff as a lover and Edgar as her husband turns into this weird cruelty toward Edgar's ward, Isabella, who's infatuated with Heathcliff, and also toward Nelly, who is just trying to protect Catherine as well as her own comfortable position in Edgar's house as Catherine's companion. And it just all kind of devolves and unravels from there. Meanwhile, Heathcliff directs his vengeance at being rejected by Catherine in favor of Edgar, which causes him to seduce and marry Isabella. So she's getting it from both sides. And she just almost seems to have this childlike level of intelligence that they both take advantage of, which makes what Heathcliff does to her so much more appalling and on the deepest level because he uses her infatuation with him to get her to agree to these depraved ways that he's treating her as a woman in order to physically release his anger at Catherine. So, what Wuthering Heights actually does exceptionally well is putting the imagery on screen in what can only be described as cinematic art. This movie, it is gorgeously filmed, capturing the sweeping views of the moors. They use light and shadow, and they pair that with the camera angles to tie in the emotional undercurrents from each scene. And all of that, it was done masterfully. If this film doesn't receive an Oscar nomination for costuming, and cinematography, I'll be surprised because nearly every scene was designed to make Catherine a godly vision of beauty on screen, both as a child and as an adult. While there's no nudity here, at least not from what you would expect from a film that borders on a romanticized version of sexual objectification and seemingly justified infidelity, the sexuality of the film itself feels almost mystical, and how it presents this cautionary tale of mistaking love for toxic obsession between two people who could never figure out how to turn love into kindness. Sadly, because of how Catherine's father treated them both during his miserable life, Neither she nor Heathcliff learned how to be likable, kind, and caring people. Instead, they are pretty much the two worst and most horrible people I have seen on screen. And I don't even know how long. And their lives didn't need to turn out like this. That is the true tragedy of this film. And perhaps maybe it's the point of the whole story. There is not a single truly heroic, redeemable character in this movie, except for maybe Edgar Linton, who just had the bad luck to fall in love with the wrong woman. It takes serious talent to bring these characters to life on screen in such a way that you can't help but to be fascinated by them, even as you're repelled by who Catherine and Heathcliff are as human beings. The director and writer, Emerald Fennell, had this singular vision for her interpretation of the story, and she brought these performances out of Margot Robbie, Jacob Elordi, and all the others in a way that kind of makes them incredibly watchable on screen. Margot Robbie brings this sexual magnetism to Catherine that makes it easy to understand why both Heathcliff and Edgar would be drawn to her. Jacob Elordi, he carries Heathcliff's brooding intensity easily, shifting from the handsome wounded lover to the hardened avenger. Chau plays Nelly as a calm and calculating woman who has buried a lifetime of being ignored and spurned by Catherine, despite her being basically Catherine's greatest friend and protector. Alison Oliver as Isabella is just tragic because she gives us a woman who isn't really in full possession of herself and can't understand the cruelty that's being heaped upon her by Heathcliff. Shazad Latif plays Edgar Linton, and he's kind of brings out this kind and compelling man who honestly did not deserve any of this. I wish he had had a different life in this film. And finally, Martin Clunes as Catherine's abusive father, Mr. Earnshaw, gives us a character that we can all roundly agree to hate and blame for everything that has ever gone wrong in this world. So, is Wuthering Heights ticket worthy? Is this the kind of film that is going to sweep audiences into theaters? Well, I kind of think there's actually a huge audience for this film because Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi have such amazing chemistry on screen. And since it's a visually stunning film to watch, I think a lot of people are just going to get swept up in that romantic film and the romantic nature of the movie. And for viewers who are looking for that kind of experience, I think you're going to enjoy it. My theater was filmed with young women who were clapping and crying at the end, and that just wasn't my response. I honestly don't feel comfortable recommending this movie to anyone, despite the terrific acting, the strong writing, and the exceptional cinematography. The problem for me is that there just isn't any hope or goodness in this film unless you really dig into it and analyze and examine why and how everything happens the way it does in the story. And how many people are actually going to do that? The main characters are truly awful and horrible people who do utterly hateful things to each other and they treat each other like garbage. And everyone else in their lives just gets kind of crapped on along the way. And I just can't square that with how I want to live my life and the kind of people I want to hang out with and the kind of film that I want to spend my time on. These characters, they never learn from their mistakes because they are blind to the consequences of their own actions and the pain that they're causing literally everyone around them. Honestly, there is really not much to like about any of them as human beings, and yet some of these scenes still linger in my mind. I think the value in this film is in the themes and in the metaphors that it explores as they relate to generational trauma, the simple desire to be truly loved, and how easy it is to create your own toxic relationship without even realizing it. However, the themes are so wrapped in tightly seductive scenery that they get subverted into this overly romanticized story of a woman who can't see how she poisons the very well from which she drinks. This film will likely do pretty well in theaters. Many viewers will cry over it, while others will just kind of shrug it off and walk away. I think the most fascinating thing about Wuthering Heights is the vastly different responses that it's going to generate. So, Wuthering Heights, what do you think about it? Are you planning to go see it? Have you already seen it? I would love to know your thoughts on it. And it's totally okay to disagree with me on this one because this film just wasn't for me, but it might be for you. And again, there were those moments that really stuck with me after it ended. If you found this review useful, even if you don't agree with me, please do give this a thumbs up and subscribe for more because that will tell the YouTube algorithm that there's something here for other people that might help them to decide if this film is for them. And I think this is one of those films where people need to hear a little bit more about it so they don't walk into it thinking it's just some grand, sweet, sweeping, super lovely romance, because it's not what they're going to get. And please do come down into the comments below and chat with me and let me know what you thought about this movie and why it did or didn't work for you. And hey, while you're here, why not check out one of these other videos as well and let me know what you think there. Thanks so much, everybody. I really appreciate you. I'll see y'all again soon. Until then, happy viewing. Bye for now.